What's up guys, Eric Vasquez here from teachmetodesign.com, and today I'm going to show you how you can build your very own Smart PSD in Photoshop. Alright guys, so today I'm going to show you how to create a Smart PSD in Photoshop. And what is a Smart PSD? Well, here's an example. It's basically a like a 3D image or anything that is created and comprised of smart objects. So what I mean by that is here, you know that I'm big on smart objects. So if you double click a smart object, you can come in and you can update it and you can type in anything you want and it will basically update in real time. So if I just change this to any other word, let's just say book. All right, I'm going to have to make it a little bit smaller just so it fits in the canvas. But if I go ahead and save this smart object, it's going to update in our main document, and so will all the copies of that smart object, as seen here. So this is what I'm going to show you how to create today. Okay? Good. So let's get started. The first thing I've done is created a new document that is 2,000 pixels wide by 1,500 pixels tall, with a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. So once you have that, go ahead and create a new layer and make sure that you have your default color selected and just fill it with black. You can do this by making sure you have black as the foreground color and then just hitting Option and Delete on your keyboard. That will fill it with your foreground color. Okay, here I'm just going to label my layers to keep things nice and neat. Okay, copy that. Alright, and then what we're going to do next is create a vignette, and what I like to do is find the center of my image. So I'll press Command-T to do a free transform, and that'll give me these little handles on the corners as well as the top and the sides of the image. So once you've done that, you can drag down a guide, and it'll just kind of snap into place in the center, the vertical and horizontal center of your image. Alright, and now you can hit Command and the semicolon on your keyboard, and that'll reveal your guides. Alright, so now that we have that, I'm going to create another layer, select my gradient tool, and make sure that you have a radial gradient selected that fades from black to transparent, like I'm showing here. Okay, but wait, there's one more step. You want to make sure that you have this reverse box checked off. So what that's going to do is when you drag, instead of going from black to transparent, it will do the opposite and go from transparent to black. Okay, so from there, click in the center and drag out towards one of the corners, and now you'll have a nice vignette. And just press 5 on your keyboard to change the opacity to about 50%. Now one more thing we're going to do here is create another new layer and fill it with solid black. Come up to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and then leave your settings on Gaussian, monochromatic, somewhere close to 300%. Once you hit OK, reduce the opacity of the layer to about 20% by pressing 2 on your keyboard, and then change the blending mode to overlay. And we're just going to call this layer noise. From here, we're going to hold down the Shift key, select the noise layer, and then click on the background layer. So you have all these layers selected, and I'm going to put them in a group folder just called background. So before we continue, I'm just going to make sure to go ahead and save my work, which you should always do. And I'm just going to call it Smart PSD Tut. Alright, from here, create a new layer, grab your text tool, and then we're just going to type something in here like motel, right? And this is kind of just a random arbitrary thing. You guys can use whatever you want, and as I showed you in the beginning, it's going to be very easy for you to update this on your own. So for now, I'm just positioning this somewhere in the center, and I just want to adjust the kerning between some of the letters real quick. So all I'm doing is using the left and right arrows to move my cursor in between the letters, and then holding down the Option key and tapping the left and right arrows to control the spacing in between the letters or the kerning. Okay, once you're happy with it, press Enter. Well, if you had a free transform, press Enter. Alright, and here we have our text. The next thing you need to do is hold down the Control key and click on this layer, and then choose Convert to Smart Object. And now I'm going to just actually call this layer, I'm just going to say Update this layer. And I'll show you why a little bit later on. Okay, so now I'm going to make a copy of it, turn this one off, and this will be our main text layer. So this is where it kind of starts to get fun. I'm going to show you guys actually how you can use an action to do this. We're going to be using some Photoshop actions, just a very simple one, so it's just kind of an introduction to actions. But before I do that, I'm going to select my main text layer and press Command J on the keyboard to make a copy of it, and then Command and the left bracket to move it below my main text layer. From here, you'll see that you have this little arrow that looks like a play button in your toolbar, and that's the Actions panel. So go ahead and click on that. What I'm going to do here, I'm just going to scrap this so I can start over and show you guys. What I'm going to do is create a new action, and I'm just going to call this Extrude. So once I hit record, don't worry, it's not timing you, it's not anything like that, like you have to rush and make all these moves. It's just going to be recording whatever actions we are performing in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to press Command J to make another copy, move it below this layer, tap it down once, and to the right once. And then stop, and that's it. Okay, so that's our action. So now if you collapse this folder, you'll have your Extrude action here. And I'm just going to come down here and click the play button. And I'm going to click the play button a lot, all right? I'm going to do it about, let's say about 24 times. And then I'm going to select my bottommost layer, hold down the Shift key, and select main text layer copy. So everything except our main text layer. All right, then I'm going to press Command G to put that into a group folder. I'm going to double click that layer and just call it 3D. Okay, so basically that extrude is created by our action, which is creating a copy and moving it down one pixel down and 1 pixel to the right. But if you do that a bunch of times, you'll basically get this kind of seamless transition that's almost a 3D effect, which is pretty cool. Okay, so from here I'm pressing Command G to put my main text layer into a group folder of its own, and I'm going to save my work once again. Alright, so inside of that main text layer folder, I'm going to select the Smart object and turn the fill layer all the way down to 0. Okay, so if I turn off the 3D layer, you'll see you can't even see it. It's basically transparent. But if I apply a layer style by double clicking it, you will be able to see that. Okay, so I'm going to apply a color overlay, and let's make it white for now. The next thing I'm going to do is add a pattern. Okay, so if you come in here, you'll have some patterns. I just created this kind of diagonal pattern here, diagonal lines, which I'm just going to kind of use to play around with. Let's see. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm not seeing it because it's underneath my color overlay. So, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to cancel this real quick. Come into my Smart object here. Select all the type. Oops. And just change it to white. Okay, that'll fix that. Save it, and then come back to your main file. And now everything is white again. So you can see already how that one change has updated all these Smart objects. Hence the name Smart PSD. So anyway, I'm going to double click and come back where we were before, although this time I don't need to check off color overlay. I'm going to come right down here to the pattern option. Alright, and select these lines. And this is super easy to create on your own. I have a video tutorial on the teachmetodesign.com as well as the YouTube channel showing you how to create your own patterns. So if you're not familiar with that, be sure to check that out. I can also send this to you guys if you want. Alright, so all I'm doing is kind of playing around with the size of these lines as well as the opacity. I don't want it to be at 100%, but maybe about 48 to 50%, something like that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is check off this option here that says Inner Shadow. Alright, now what this is going to do is give us this cool kind of inset look, right? I don't want the size and I don't want the choke to go anywhere, so I'm going to set those both to 0. I'm going to set the distance to around 18 or so. And then, the nice thing about this is you can just kind of move it around and, it'll preview it for you in real time. But let's go with an angle of 45, blend mode set to multiply with a solid black, and we'll reduce the opacity to about 35, maybe a little more. Let's go to 48%. Okay? Hit OK, and now you're done. So I'm going to make another copy of this layer by selecting it and pressing Command J. And what I want to do this time is hold down Control and click on that little effects icon on the layer and clear the layer style. Okay, so now I'm going to do what I did before and reduce the fill to 0. So now it's basically an invisible layer. Okay, double click the layer, and this time we're just going to add a stroke. All right, I'm just going to pick like a reddish orange color and change it to around 5. Let's say 5 for now. And we also want to change the position to inside rather than outside. Okay, so go ahead and hit OK to apply that. So now you've basically got your stroke layer, your main text layer, and now we're going to work on the 3D group folder here. So what's cool about group folders is that, just like working with layers, you can apply layer styles to folders just like you can individual layers. So double click on the group folder, and the first thing we're going to do is come up here and check off bevel and emboss. Alright, we want to change the technique to hard, play around with the depth a little bit as well as the size. Alright, something like that. And I know this is looking a little funky right here, and I'll tell you why. It's because we have the fill of this layer above it set to 0, so you're seeing kind of what's happening there. So let's just hit OK really quick and come back to our main text layer, make a copy of it, move it down below the original text layer, and then this one we're just going to increase the fill, so that one will be set to 100. Okay, so hopefully you're with me. All I did there was create a copy of it. I'm gonna clear the layer styles here. If I just did it manually, but clear the layer styles of that, so that you now have 100% fill on this layer, a layer with your inner shadow and pattern, and then a layer that only contains the stroke. Okay, so this one I'll just call solid. All right, now we can come back to our 3D layer and keep messing around with that. All right, so what you want to do here is just kind of play around with the angle a little bit until you get something you like that looks like a cool shadow is being cast onto the letters. And let's try something like -135, or maybe without the negative. You just have to play around a little bit. Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, and then you can also play around with the color here. So I'm going to change the highlight mode to normal, and then maybe select a color kind of similar to the one we used before. So I'm going to use like a orangish color here and set that to normal, 100%. And then for the shadow mode, we're going to go with just a deeper kind of orange color, or just a darker, yeah, like a darker orange. All right, and jack up the opacity to around 100. And we can leave that to normal for now. Okay, but I want to, continue to tweak this a little bit. So feel free to play around with this a little bit. Until you find something that you like, it's totally fine to just play around, see what looks best. I think for this part the angle is really the most important thing. Okay, then I'm going to come down here and check off the color overlay, and then change the overall color of that to like a darker orange or something, you know, somewhere around here. Okay, so now we have our bevel and emboss as well as a color overlay layer. All right, and the nice thing is you can come in here really at any time you want and you know, change any of these options until you get something that you like. All right, so go ahead and hit OK. So now you can see we've kind of got the beginnings of this 3D shape here going. I'm going to come back into my main text layer and just modify the inner shadow a little bit because I want to uncheck the Use Global Light option. Hit OK, and now you'll see where we're at. So before I go on, I'm going to come into our background folder, and with the noise layer selected, come down here to your adjustment layer icon, click on that, and then choose solid color from the menu. All right, I'm just going to sample this brighter orange color here. Wow, that hurts my eyes. Okay, I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay, and then maybe, you know, reduce the opacity a little bit, or just change the color so I'm not going blind. Yeah, there's something about there. Okay, but right now, you know, our text is kind of blending, at least this stroke here is blending a little bit. So I want to try to pop that off of the background. And I'll show you what we're going to do next to do that. Come back into your main text layer folder, select this solid layer, the smart object, press Command J to make a copy, and then we're going to move it below the 3D layer. Okay? I'm going to double click on it and change the color to black. Okay? So now if I hold down the Alt Option key and click on the eye over here in the layers palette, it'll just show me that one layer. So you can see that all I have is a black layer that says motel. Alright, but here's the cool part. When you're working with smart objects, you can apply smart filters. So when you apply a smart filter, it basically allows you to come in here and modify the settings of your blur or any other filter that you're working with. Alright, so I'm going to apply a pretty drastic blur here, and then hit OK. Alright, and I'm just going to tap this down, move it over to the side, so that it starts to look like a shadow a little bit. Alright, I think it's a little too much, the motion blur, so I'm just going to dial it back, and then lower the opacity to around 50%. Now I'm going to make, what I'm going to do is come back to my actions, and I'm going to use the same extrude action that we used before to make more and more copies. Alright, and I'm doing this a bunch because I want to have, you know, a pretty long shadow. Alright, so let's do it about 50 times. And we're going to do the same thing. Select your bottommost layer, come up, hold down the Shift key, and click on your top layer, and then press Command G to put them all into a group folder. And we're just going to call it Shadow 1. I'm going to lower the opacity to about, say, 30%. Okay, so now we have Shadow 1. So I'm going to come back to the main text layer and make another copy of it. Oh, sorry, I mean the solid layer. Make another copy of that. And we're going to do the same thing. Double click, change it to black for the color overlay, and then move it down just below the 3D folder. Now this time we're just going to apply a regular Gaussian blur. Okay, leave it to around 14.8 is what I have it at, but somewhere in that ballpark should do the trick. Okay, and then I'm just going to, again, use Shift. I'm going to use Shift and the arrow keys to reposition the shadow until I get it somewhere I like. Yeah, maybe about there. Okay, so with that layer selected, press Command G, and we'll just call this one Shadow 2. Okay, so hopefully you guys are with me so far. This is a good place to save my work. And then I'm going to select both of these shadow layers, put them in another folder, and just call them shadows. Alright, now I'm going to come back to the 3D group folder, double click it, and we're also going to add a drop shadow to this. So again, I'm going to put my settings for the spread and size at 0, and then just kind of play around with the distance as well as the angle. Feel free to play around, see what kind of effects you get, see what you want for the positioning. I'm just going to use 135 because that's the same angle that we used for our previous shadow, I believe. And I'm just going to lower the opacity a bit more and hit OK. Alright, now I'm going to come back to the main text layer, and we have this stroke layer here, but what I want to do is maybe add some more effects to this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer by once again pressing Command plus J on the keyboard. We can leave the fill set to 0 like we did previously, and then I'm going to double click it, uncheck stroke, and just apply an outer glow. Alright, let's see how this looks if we change the blend mode to overlay. Let's see if this is worth keeping or not. Maybe just a little. Alright, and we can play around with the bevel and emboss. See what that looks like. And it's okay because working with these smart objects is totally non-destructive. So it's not messing anything up. It's easy to fix if you're not happy with it, but it also gives you control over the highlights and the shadows over all the edges here. Right? I don't really like the outer glow here. I'm not loving that, but let's see if we can apply another inner shadow here. All right. I'm going to uncheck global light and kind of do what we did before, except I'm going to bring it in a little bit further this time. I'm going to bring the opacity down. All right, so now we've kind of got like a double inner shadow happening here. All right. Okay. I don't know if I want the distance to come in quite so far, but maybe something around there. And then hit OK. All right, but now this shadow here is kind of covering the stroke, so we want to move that below that layer. Okay, so now the stroke is still on top. All right, but we now have an extra inner shadow here, so I'm going to call that inner shadow. And what I want to do next is create a Hue Saturation adjustment layer. So make sure that you have your main text layer folder selected. Come down here to your adjustment layer icon and then choose Hue Saturation. And what this is going to do is kind of let us move the hue slider around and change the color in real time. So it'll be easy for us to kind of preview different color schemes and things like that. All right, until you get something that you like. Okay. Now I'm just kind of coming back in and moving some of these folders around, moving some of these layers around in the background folder. I want to see how the noise looks if I change it to soft light. Does it look better above the color fill layer or below it? Just experiment with the placement of some of these layers, but I think for now, the noise, I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. Okay. And I mean, that's basically how this works, guys. I mean, you have all the tools at your disposal now. You may not want the noise on there at all, but I thought it looks kind of cool. It's probably too much, but you can make it, darker if you want. Maybe make the orange a little bit darker. Okay, and now all we have to do if we want to change this is double click this layer that we created in the very beginning that says update this layer. Alright, so if I come in here with my text tool and select everything, and let's just change it to build, okay? And then just be sure to hit Command S to save it so that it can update in your main document. And it may take a few minutes because, as you've seen, we've created a lot of smart objects. So just be patient with that. And then Command W will close that tab. And there you go. It's updated all of these smart objects, your main smart object, your extrusion 3D smart objects, as well as all of your shadows. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's a really cool and fun way to create some 3D type that is very easy to update. And it all uses, smart objects. I've also showed you how you can create your own Photoshop actions, albeit a very simple one, but it comes in handy, and it's great for using it for things like this. So again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Please give us a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. And go ahead and sign up for our email list, guys, and receive your free copy of the Essential Photoshop Tutorials ebook. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.